much for making the time to come as far as Boston. He landed at 1 o'clock last night. You are wide awake. Too much coffee? So Ramesh, as every one of you may possibly know, is a part of the MIT Media Lab team. I've had the privilege of knowing him for many, many years. And he's specially flown in to talk about what's happening in AI. And I will let him make his presentation first, and you will do the questions later.
Sounds
so Ramesh,
good.
over to you.
Thank you, PK. Hello, everyone. Let's talk about decentralized AI. But before that, consider the AI stack today. And you can think of AI stack has two parts, the core AI and the applied AI. In the core AI is making a lot of noise, which is chips and cloud platforms and even foundation models. And then on top of that is applied AI that we have been hearing about today, kind of tailoring those models for your tasks, different software platforms that are necessary, and applications, and they're all supported by other emerging technologies in communication, VR, AR, geospatial, and so on. Now, this is an interesting time to think about if you're a startup, if you're a fund, about how you should really, place your bets for the next 5 years. How many of you either saw or heard the reports from yesterday's OpenAI's development day, right? And I think the first reaction from many people was, oh, this is going to put like half the startups out there out of business. And the challenge for that is that within applied AI, you can create a graph that looks like this. On the horizontal axis is how much effort is required to get something going. And the vertical axis is how strong a moat you have, right? So in applied AI, you have things like screen AI. Like this is a couple of kids out of college. They can build very quick, thin wrapper screen AI models that are easy to build, but also very easily appended. Chatbots, new agents, and so on. New avatars, making better videos, better special effects. And then on the bottom right, which I haven't shown here, is the sprinkled AI, which is big companies coming and saying, hey, you know what? We can get into the AI business because I'm going to hire some consultants and implement some chatbots and hire some other people and do better recommendation or summarize my internal meetings and so on. And we got AI under control. And that doesn't work either. I think the real opportunity is in what I call dimensional AI. And the idea here is that you need to be in the real world. It has to touch real lives. And this requires, working in the dimensional world, but you also need multidimensional teams and multidimensional executions. And only through that, you're going to make an impact on the $100 trillion of world GDP, today. So if AI is going to impact the next $100 trillion of GDP, this is a massive opportunity. And most of the action is going to be in the top right, in the dimensional AI. And so I'm a professor at MIT, but also a scientist at C10 Labs, which is a venture studio fund. So go to the website to see a lot of the information about how we're thinking about creating very strong moat applied AI ventures. Now, we're all fans of GPT, but that's just looking at the public data. Let's think of it at the surface web. Wikipedia, research papers, books, and so on. But the rest of the value, rest of the services are, are submerged for this iceberg. And the two main areas where it's difficult for something like ChatGPT to make a difference. So, if you are designing a new system for a company, which involves data that's siloed or requires simulation, or if you're saying, hey, I'm the health commissioner in Bangalore, what should be my COVID policy? Or you are at an enterprise and say, hey, how can I serve my customers because I want to understand their needs? There is no mechanism right now to just write a script or a prompt to get that information. And that's because most of this information is not available at your fingertips. So if you look at these two axes of siloed data and simulation, you can think of the previous wave of AI as, at least generative AI, as building office assistants. But how can we move an AI to behave more like an engineer, looking at the present data, but ideally train so that an AI behaves like a scientist, right? So for that, we have to again think about this different axis. We may have to move away from highly centralized model, and today's big companies are working in a regime where data is centralized, the compute is centralized, but more importantly, even the governance is centralized. And that's why some of the issues we talked about responsible AI, regulations, and so on start playing a role. But more importantly, also stifles innovation. If you think about kind of just the human race, we moved from autocracy and kingdoms slowly over to democracy, which arguably is more messy and more inefficient. Nevertheless, it has enough checks and balances. And so the powers of influence, the powers of intelligence, the powers of money are distributed through the society. And that seems to work better in the long run. And the same thing needs to happen in AI with decentralization of data, compute, and governance. So let's walk through these 3 examples of what we mean. So let's start with a concrete example of AI that behaves like a scientist, but data is still centralized. So you might be building an autonomous vehicle or a new surveillance system or a new drone, and what you would like to do is write a single command, say, design me a drone or design me a perception system, hit a single button, and it designs everything for you, as long as you have all the data. So traditionally, this has been solved with reinforcement learning, but the challenge is that you need really good simulations. So in this case, the gap between simulation and reality may be very low. Coming back to autonomous vehicles, it may be possible to simulate driving in a city and passengers and bicycles, maybe not cows, but it's possible to simulate a lot of this world, and you could train a lot of these things internally. So this is a lot of the work we do in our group at MIT. Now, if you go to the top left and start thinking about areas where you cannot do any simulation at all. So think about behaviors of shoppers, right? The data is very siloed, and the approximation algorithms are very approximate. So, I had to go back and celebrate my daughter's birthday, and who likes to hear to kind of create a thematic birthday for their loved ones, right? And how many people get really stressed out and scared about it, right? And the reason why is, when we think about important events like this, the merchants, the businesses are trying to sell the product, but not buy our need, right? So if I go to a shop like this, it's a very stressful experience. What I need is some kind of an AI where I just say, hey, shopping AI, my daughter's birthday is next week. Can you help me figure out what should I get for it? And what it should do is it should look at my photo roll and see what my daughter likes. Is she more into Star Wars or is she more into Barbie? And then go and look at the photo rolls of all her friends' parents' phones as well. Look at those photo rolls. See what birthday parties were successful versus not successful using some metric. Figure out a theme and start suggesting me. But then there's a bigger challenge because if the shop starts, if Star Wars is very popular that particular week, they're going to have a big challenge with the supply chain. So they have to go back to the supply chain to see, hey, maybe the top choice is not Star Wars. Maybe you might want to go with Barbie, right? And then of course the business already has a 3D model of my house, so I can just hold my mobile phone, and with generative AI, I can see in augmented reality, a video of my daughter celebrating the birthday, right, with that particular theme, and can give me 3 options: a $100 option, $500 option, and a $1,000 option. And I can say, you know what? I just want this middle one. And the next day, everything arrives at my home with all the instructions. I'm ready to go. So what's going to take us in this AI world to become a kind of a product targeting business to a business where we're actually buying needs? You think it's possible? Right? Okay, there are too many challenges in this problem, right? Because, where does the data come from? Why the hell would I give access to my photo roll, right? Not just my photo roll, but my daughter's friend's parents' photo roll. The supply chain, has a lot of invisibility. I mean, a given shop themselves doesn't know what's in their own inventory. What will the UX look like? How will you get 3D models of all these things? But I think this is where trillions of dollars of economic value is going to be unlocked over time, right? It's not going to be going to another browser window and searching for it for hours and hours and figuring out what should be in your shopping cart. Now let's look at the top right? Where we're in a world where we really want the AI to behave like a scientist to find cure. And we have many ventures, many startups, many innovators here today at Nasscom looking at this very unique deep tech sectors where we really need to think like a scientist. And in this case, the gap between simulation and reality could be very far. Like simulating a disease, simulating a pandemic is very challenging, right? So what we need is not a large language model, but a large population model, right? LPM. So some of the work we are doing at our group at MIT is being able to simulate things not just top down, like what we saw during the pandemic, but also bottom up. So if you have this question about should you deploy low cost and fast, imprecise antigen paper tests, or should you use, very fast and precise antigen test versus very slow but very accurate PCR test? And these are decisions that every city had to make, every state has to make, worth billions of dollars. And lives are at stake. Now, imagine if there's a ChatGPT-like interface where you could just ask that question. You cannot, because you have to simulate the city demographic. The solution that might work in Bangalore city might be very different from rural Madhya Pradesh. They're not going to use the same solution, right? Because the spread of the disease is different, people's behavior is different, the cost, supply chain is different, and so on. So there's a new world called agent-based modeling that allows you to create these large population models. And you can literally simulate every individual in your demographic. In this case, we use the country of UK, so about 70 million agents, which is individuals. And we have the static demographic, how many teachers, how many essential workers, how many families with how many children. We have the static data, and we also have the dynamic data of cases that are increasing, right? But you can take the same idea and apply it to many other areas. If you're going to change your discount on a business from 5% to 10%, what would be the ripple effect of that? Would you get more gains because of that, right? Or if you're doing a biological or chemical experiment and it has something at a microscopic level, if you change the behavior, what's going to be the end outcome? So many cases when you don't have ability to simulate from scratch, there are no laws of physics or chemistry, or it's very difficult for you to scale your simulations, techniques like agent-based modeling starts playing a role. So let's think about another problem in finding cures. So imagine, your cousin in rural Karnataka, has chest pain. She had COVID. Her family has history of lung cancer, and she's just not getting good directions for her health, right? How many people have been in a situation like this where you just don't get a good care, right? And right now I can go on a make my trip, and I can just search for airlines, and I get a beautiful interface about what to do. Imagine I could do the same thing, and maybe for $5, maybe for $10, I'm willing to put on the global hive and get that answer. How would I do that? Especially in a fast-moving challenge like COVID. The answer is already here. What I can do for my cousin in rural Karnataka is, aggregate all the health data that's available during the pandemic. That could be millions of petabytes of data. I have everybody's chest x-rays, everybody's health reports, and so on. I can, hire, the best machine learning engineers, best compute, and train the best machine learning model. I can take my $10 and reward it. It's very little. Reward it to the hospitals and patients who shared the data with me, but not the one from whom I did not buy the data. And finally, just like make my trip, create a beautiful interface for my cousin who can understand if she wants more aggressive treatments or wants to stay in her town or go to Bangalore, what different solutions are for that. You think it's possible? Okay, that's the God's eye view. If you can create this God's eye view, we can solve almost any societal problem, right? Of course, the reality is that you cannot centralize the data because of privacy, regulation, trade secrets. We cannot train the best machine learning models because it's going to cost millions of dollars. And what does it mean to train that? I only have $10. How much am I going to give away? and then how can I suggest those treatment in an interpretable way? So that seems very daunting to achieve. But still, if you think about the way the internet works today in a highly decentralized manner, where there are many buyers and many sellers, and although individual buyers is only spending $1 to $5, because of this decentralization, you're able to provide those services. If I had to create a Make My Trip only for a handful of customers, it would be too expensive. But they're able to amortize the cost because thousands, maybe millions of people are searching it at the same time. So if thousands of millions of people are looking for a health solution, that $10 will add up to tens of millions of dollars on a daily basis, right? And that's where these new AI industries are going to come up. So how do we decentralize? We already have the solution called Web3. How many people are big fans of cryptocurrency? I guess hands are coming down because I mentioned cryptocurrency. And so that was very scammy. We agree that. But the building blocks of the decentralization are actually the same building blocks we need for decentralizing AI. That Web3 was more for decentralizing transactions, but now we have to decentralize data, compute, and intelligence. So pseudo-anonymity has to be upgraded to privacy. Ledger tech, immutable ledgers have to be, for verifying transactions, have to be upgraded to verifiable AI. We have to take the main incentives in Web3, which was either gas money or speculation, and upgrade that so that there are data markets. Because if I'm going to pull data from various hospitals in Karnataka, I might have to pay them for their data, but then I have to know what it means, right? Is it worth $100? Is it $1,000? Is it worth $1 million? Because it's not just based on number of records, but based on how relevant that data is for me. And then finally, the reason why Web3 exists is because of those exchanges. So what does exchanges for decentralized AI will look like? So we have a whole program at MIT called Decentralized Society. So check it out, dsocmit.org. And we're looking at multiple verticals of this problem of decentralized society. And of course, decentralized intelligence is one of the most important aspects of that. So to summarize, if you want to move from screen AI that's going to get disrupted by the next OpenAI update or next BARD update to dimensional AI in the applied world, and move away from this highly centralized world to a decentralized world, we're going to start thinking about AI not just as an office assistant or an engineer, but the AI has to behave like a scientist. Because that's how we're going to provide those services to millions of people and make them part of the AI revolution. Thank you.
Ramesh, thank you. Please. So while AI is changing seemingly almost everything that's going in this world, one of the things that people are afraid of is losing their jobs, correct? And that's an argument that has been going around the world. How many of you feel that you'll lose your jobs because of AI? Just one or two people? Well, we've got a great audience.
Others are building their venture, so they're trying to replace other jobs.
Or maybe they're all AI entrepreneurs. Everybody's an AI entrepreneur? And who's an AI entrepreneur? But there are only 5 AI entrepreneurs here. The other people will work for AI entrepreneurs, probably? Okay. Anyway, coming back to that, so you raised a very beautiful idea, and we heard parts of it earlier in Manu's point about decentralized AI in the sense of democratizing AI.
Right.
So how does this work towards, like I saw when you talk about decentralization, that almost everybody will be able to contribute in some way, form or the other in the various examples that you gave. So where does it, so decentralized AI, does it also mean democratized AI?
That's a very good question, because I think today we seem to be living in a world where only a handful of companies who have access to compute and have the NVIDIA GPUs are controlling. But that's not going to be the way going forward. Especially as you go into start different as you start going different verticals like health, transportation, energy, and so on, fintech. Everybody's going to run their own small models all over the place, and they're all going to talk to each other. And the need today that, hey, if you're in financial world, all your data goes to a centralized place. That's a huge risk. I mean, if you're going to live in a data-rich world, centralize everything is tough. 10 years ago, when big tech companies said, you know what, we're just going to give you some social media, we're just going to give you some, maps and so on.
Free email.
Yeah, we'll just collect your data and trust us, everything's good. I think the population has moved beyond that, and they realize this is not sustainable. So whether you call it privacy, you just call it awareness, at the same time, people also realize that their data is valuable in some sense, or organizations realize their data could be worth millions of dollars. They don't want to give it away. So I think the democratization is going to happen because everybody starts realizing that the power has to be diffused, and there has to be checks and balances on who owns it, who benefits from it, are they using it responsibly, and overall, is innovation getting diffused or it's getting stifled? So I think it's and especially in a country like India, where it's still early days in terms of a very big player that's dominating AI could be a fertile ground for this kind of a democratic AI.
Very good. So in India context, this could actually be the holy grail of actually, keeping the balance between losing jobs and creating other jobs for that matter. The other question which is on everybody's mind is this whole diversity of infrastructure, which is available to build AI products, like from hardware to, data to privacy and other laws which restrict it. If you look at it from that perspective, do you see this whole pockets of influence that are coming in where countries are now guarding this technology and not sharing it as much? Do you think this will lead to lack of collaboration, or for that matter, another certain generation of haves and have-nots will be created in this?
There's definitely a risk, at least in the short term, that only certain large players have their large models, large multimodal models, large population models that I was talking about, and that require tens of millions of dollars of investments and talent. So there's the risk for that. But I think it's going to be a short-term risk because, as you saw yesterday's announcement from OpenAI, they're releasing models that are 2 to 3 times smaller than before. So this fear we had, like right now they have 100 billion parameter models, but the next one will be 1 trillion parameter models. I think that may be true for very specific scenarios, but most other models will not be that large. In fact, researchers are working overnight, over time, to make sure they can fit on a laptop. So I would imagine majority of applications, 95% of applications, would not require this extremely large compute platforms. So what does it mean? So why are these people spending billions of dollars? Because they want to create that short-term mode. But if you're starting today, not 5 years ago, there's no point investing in large compute infrastructure. I think it's better to focus on what's coming down the pipe. And of course, if you already have tens of millions of dollars in your bank, in your large company here in India, please go ahead and invest in the compute because you don't want to take the risk. But if you're not, and if you only have raised a couple of $1 million or $10 million, you're a mid-sized company, let's not get fixated on spending money on large compute infrastructure. I'm not so worried about that part.
So ChatGPT, for example, the models that OpenAI are releasing are all paid models, at least the worthwhile ones. And they're getting people used to paying for them, correct?
Right.
Now, in the India context, we've always looked at it from a predatory point of view in terms of pricing, for example. In the past, I've seen telecom go through the same. We saw, in fact, IT services, the India stack is a great example, where people were able to build for India, right, and price points for India. So do you see that direction coming in, or us going in that direction?
I mean, India has been a leader in democratizing, or even, I would even call it decentralizing, some
and
of this,
pricing.
And reducing the price significantly in many areas, from finance, identity, and so on, and now in e-commerce, from India Stack and iSpirit and amazing work going on in that space. So I think that's a good direction. I hope, and I had a very good chat with Pramod a few days ago, and I was encouraging him to start thinking about decentralized AI right away. And of course, they're thinking about how to bring federated learning and so on, but that's only taking one tiny slice of decentralized AI, because as I said, there are 4 pillars. There is privacy, there's verifiability, there's data markets, and there is exchanges. So I think it'll be amazing to see a similar movement that we have seen in identity and fintech for democratization also take place in the AI world here.
So both of us are Indians who don't live in India, okay, and possibly have a view from outside and probably a different view. What is it that, Ramesh, people like you and I can do to actually make this or accelerate this or make it happen? And you, especially you, now that you're thinking about India in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really critical juncture for humanity in general, not just for any particular country as such. I mean, you know, last time there was intelligent species was us, and now we are giving a birth to new intelligent species. What do you want to call it? AI or something else. And this is going to be transformative. The world is going to look completely different in 5 years. It's not like the mobile phone revolution. It's not like the e-commerce revolution. It's not like the social revolution. This one is going to turn everything upside down in the next 5 years. And the concern, like you said earlier, is the haves and have-nots. For other revolutions, there's always time for diffusion. If you talk about mobile revolution, it took some time to get those towers up and bring the price down for smartphones below $100. It took a long time to get there. Almost every revolution took 5, 10, 15 years. But for AI, all the rails are already here. People already have internet, people already have phones, they already have compute. It's simply a matter of switching it on. And so you're going to see this transformation happen in the next 2 to 3 years. That just doesn't leave enough time for society to adapt. It doesn't leave the governments, doesn't leave big incumbents to react to what's going on. So I think the challenge for any country, especially a country like India, which is very dynamic, but may not have the first mover advantage, is that it could get left behind. And if India gets left behind, think about everybody else, the middle and low income countries, that could left behind even more. So if we are worried about winner takes all, this could be a really big risk if you remain in a centralized AI world. So I would say, whatever you're doing in your life, just stop doing it and focus on AI. Stop watching movies, stop chatting about politics. It's about AI, AI, AI. I would encourage every radio station, every TV station to have a segment for 3 minutes during their break saying, let me give you this new snippet about AI, and just make people aware about its risks, its opportunities, and also what individuals can do. So if it becomes, the one thing I really like when a lot of my friends from overseas come to India, they say, it feels like almost everybody in India is either an engineer or has an engineering mindset. It's a country of engineers, whether they have engineering degree or not. And I think we have to take that one level up and say, it's not just about engineering, but now all of us are going to think like scientists, because AI is going to be my buddy, my sidekick, with which I can solve many problems for myself, for my community, and for the society. So it's such an important moment. Can you hear me? Yeah. It's such an important moment. And I know 2 years ago, 3 years ago, if you told people about AI, they would just roll their eyes, like, whatever. This is never going to happen. We know about the previous cryptocurrency wave and other waves, and it never happened. But this one is real, and this one is very transformative. So on one hand, I'm very worried. On the other hand, if it becomes an ethos of a society, there's a chance it can be done.
So everybody shouldn't write a book, they should make their own AI, correct?
If whatever that takes. But I think if there's any resistance to AI, that's completely futile. If there is, and by the way, it doesn't matter what field you're working in. If you're working in robotics or biotech, or you're in the government, the first thing you have to do is dedicate your life to become AI literate and AI expert, right? It doesn't really matter what you're doing. So absolutely.
So with the message that all of you, when you go out from here, make AI, okay? On this fun note, Ramesh, thank you so much for waking us up to the other opportunity, which is decentralized AI. Thank you very much.